Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Sole Drop. In this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Nike KD16 and the Nike KD17. So the 17 pretty much just came out and it retails for 150 bucks and the KD16 retails for 160 bucks. So I like how they decreased the price by 10 bucks. However, the KD16 is on sale. It's a pretty old shoe. It's been out for a year, almost a year. So there are some colorways available for like 90, 100 bucks, which is kind of crazy. So if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, try to leave an affiliate link in the description box. All the sizes for this colorway of the KD17 is still available. So if you do choose to get either of these shoes, it does help me out if you do choose to buy the shoe from the affiliate link in the description box or the product pictures underneath this video or right around over here, right? So as always, thank you guys so much for all the support, but let's get it started right off with the Tracciones. So yeah, I have translucent outsoles for both of my colorways of the KD16 and the KD17, which is kind of a bummer because I don't like translucent outsoles. I feel like in the KD16, it actually didn't really yellow all too much, surprisingly. Right, but that's one thing that I don't like about translucents. But then like, yeah, the KD17, this will probably yellow very, very quickly, you know? But yeah, the KD16, like from my personal experience, wasn't the best, right? Like I did need to break it in. When I first got it, it wasn't great, but then it did break in, did get a little bit better, especially on a clean core. But just in my personal experience, it wasn't the best on dust, right? But I heard, you know, with the solid rubber outsole, it was actually a lot better. So that's just from my personal experience. But the KD17, just trying it on my wood floors, it actually has a really nice bite, right? And also another thing that I noticed that was a little bit different is that it actually has a nice squeak as well, right? Squeak of course has nothing to do with performance, but I feel like a lot of people, including me, like to have a squeakier outsole. So yeah, the KD17 does have a squeakier outsole. The KD16 is pretty much silent, right? Once you break it in, it does get a little bit squeakier, but it's not super loud or anything, especially comparing it to the KD17. And also, of course, I did try the KD16 like right before I filmed this video on my wood floors, trying to compare it to the KD17 on my wood floors, right? Like just how it feels. And yeah, the KD17 does seem like it does have a better bite. So that's a good thing, right? That's one thing I didn't like about the 16 that much. And that's also another thing that kind of like led me to like other shoes more because traction is pretty important, right? So the KD17 so far, for my initial comparison, does feel like it does have better traction. Also for durability, I mean, if you're playing on outdoor court, I feel like they'll both be pretty good. The rubber is pretty hard and the grooves are pretty deep, especially here in the KD17, so you should be fine on an outdoor court. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition, I mean, the KD16 was actually pretty smooth. Here in the heel, we have a nice curved shape and also exposed foam midsole, right? And I believe this was Cushlon, so it's really, really soft here in the heel. And coming here into the forefoot, we got a nice curved shape, and it actually is pretty stiff, right? It's pretty hard to bend here in the forefoot, but under your body weight, it's a lot easier, of course. But it doesn't really have a crazy springiness to it because it's just plastic, you know what I mean? I mean, it's not terrible, but of course, comparing to like a full-length carbon fiber plate, like in the Wild 10 Low, this isn't as springy, but still kind of nice, right? The KD17 on the other hand, same thing. Right here in the heel, we have an exposed foam. It's really, really soft. It's a curved shape as well, so that feels really nice here in the heel. And the forefoot, we have a nice curved shape, and we have a little bit of flex here in the forefoot. It also almost feels like there's a little bit more tension to it, and that has to do with the struggle board. It's like plastic there, I feel like. So that's probably what's kind of keeping it from bending here in the forefoot too much. But there is a little bit of bend to it, right? A little bit of tension, but it does bend a good amount here in the midfoot. Look at that, right where the midfoot shank plate kind of starts. But here in the KD16, it doesn't bend at all here in the midfoot. So the KD16 obviously will be better for torsional support. So there is the heel to toe transition there. Moving on to the cushioning setup. So it's a very, very similar cushioning setup. As far as the overall foam goes, I would say the KD17 feels a little bit softer, just a tiny bit, right? There's a good amount of compression, and just even feeling it with your fingers, it almost feels a little bit softer, just a tiny bit. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously this is a comparison video. I feel like most people aren't gonna notice a difference, but to me, you know, it just feels like the KD17 is a little bit softer. But of course, the 16 still has a good amount of compression here in the heel. It's a really soft foam. Also, they both have an air strobel unit in the heel, right? So that feels really nice for stepping comfort in the heel. But then like the difference, of course, is the cord feel, right? And also the forefoot zoom unit. So, or I guess like what's in the forefoot for the strobel board, right? But as far as like the cord feel goes, the KD17 actually does feel a little bit lower to the ground, which of course is a good thing, but the KD16 wasn't terrible. It wasn't like you're super high up off the ground or anything. So in my personal opinion, not that big of an upgrade, you know, but the KD16, you can definitely feel the zoom unit a lot easier in the forefoot. I don't know how, maybe it's a larger zoom unit, or maybe it's because the strobel board is a little bit softer. But if you look at the KD16, it's just a regular kind of strobel board, right? But in the KD17, it feels almost like a plastic material, right? So if I, like, it's literally just plastic in the forefoot, you know? So I don't know why they added that. But you can't really feel that much bounce in the forefoot, and you can't really feel the zoom unit in the forefoot that much in the KD17, so that kind of sucks. So in my personal opinion, I feel like the KD16 is a little bit better, but of course we'll have to see on that. I haven't played in the KD17 yet. This is just my initial comparison. But yeah, the KD16 right now is feeling a little bit better for cushion. And now moving on to the upper, I definitely like the KD17 a little bit more because I like more of a minimal upper, but the KD16 definitely feels a lot more supportive, right? So the 16 is using this mesh material, but there also seems to be an underlaying material here in the toe box, and we have this kind of crazy synthetic material that goes all around the perimeter of the upper. Look at that, right? But the 17 is a lot more minimal. It's literally just this mesh material. We have this extremely thin layer of fuse around the toe box, comparing to the 16, which is this kind of crazy synthetic material. It's pretty robust, adds a lot to the support, right? So that also does feel pretty different here in the toe box. Like I said, I like the KD17 a little bit more because it's more minimal, but the 16 does feel a little bit more, or actually a good amount more supportive in the toe box. Also, for the lateral cages, right, with this plastic piece, the 16 is a lot stiffer. You know, the 17 with these kind of really thin and flimsy plastic pieces, it literally just bends. The 16 doesn't really bend as easily comparing to the 17. So yeah, it does feel a lot more supportive and robust for the upper for the 16. And then here for the tongue, it actually feels pretty similar. You know, the amount of padding that they have is pretty similar. But one thing I like about the 17 a little bit more is that we can see some foam pods a little bit right here at the bottom of the tongue right here. So that feels a little bit nicer here in the KD17. You know, it's just a little bit more padded right on top of your foot here in the midfoot. The 16 is just more of like the material. There's not a whole lot of foam there, right? It's just on top of the tongue. And then here in the ankle area, I would say it's pretty much identical, right? The amount of foam and actually the type of foam that they're using, it's like an average amount of padding, which does feel pretty nice. So yeah, that feels pretty similar. It's just the overall kind of like upper material. It just feels a little bit more robust, a little bit thicker and stiffer here in the KD16, which of course is going to be better for support. But of course, like for the overall quality, I would say the 16 maybe is a little bit better. And also for durability, the 16 is probably going to be better as well because of the overall synthetic materials that's going over the entire kind of upper versus the 17, which is just a really thin type of mesh, you know? So there is the upper material there, and we'll get into support and all that in a little bit. But as far as the fit goes, I went up half a size for both of these shoes and they both fit me extremely well, right? So my toes go pretty close to the edge of the shoe. There is a little bit of space because I did go up half a size. However, it's not that big of an issue because it's still pretty dang snug here in the toe box, right? It's pretty much an identical fit, right? So whatever fit you went in the 16, you can go pretty much the exact same size in the 17, you should be good to go. And also width wise, as you guys all know, KDs are usually pretty narrow. So yeah, for me, it's slightly narrow in both the 16 and 17. So the fit is pretty much identical, right? Now moving on to the support in lockdown, that's the biggest difference, right? So the KD16 has a good amount of support. You can see all this right here. You can have this wing, this shark fin almost, right? I really didn't like this design, but as far as like functionality goes and for support, it's definitely a lot better than the 17, right? But that's the question, of course, right? How supportive is the KD17? We'll have to wait and see for the actual full performance review, but yeah, we can see, look at this. You can see how much the material kind of comes out right? There's not a whole lot of lateral counters. It's just this really thin plastic here in the forefoot on the lateral side, right? The KD16, it doesn't really do that as much, right? Because of this material, this thicker, kind of more supportive material right here. So for lateral containment, the KD16 was good for me. The 17, we have yet to see. And for lockdown, 16, I didn't really have any huge issues. Some people were saying they did have some heel slippage, but for me, I didn't really notice anything. And then the 17, it feels pretty much the exact same as well for lockdown. And lateral stability, the 16 was good for me. I didn't really have any issues with lateral instability, and the 17 seems to be pretty much the exact same width, right? So for lateral stability, I pretty much tied up. And now moving on to the weight of the shoe. So the KD16 wasn't super light, right? The 16, I think it was like 13 point something. 13.3 ounces, right? So not super heavy. The average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces, but 13.3 versus 12.6. So that's like what, 0.7 ounces lighter. So they definitely did shed off some weight, obviously from the actual upper, right? We can see all this like plastic, the synthetic materials. The KD17 kind of shed all of that off. The KD14, this was the best shoe. Like this is GOAT. This is GOAT level performance right over here. I absolutely love the shoe. And it's 12.5 ounces, right? That's pretty much average weight. And the KD15 is pretty much average weight, I think, as well. Yeah, 12.7 ounces. So yeah, the 14, 15, and 17 are pretty much average weight. And very responsive, or actually I don't know about the 17 yet, but the 14 and 15 were very responsive. The 16 definitely was a little bit heavier and also not as responsive because the traction just wasn't as good, right? So there is the weight there. Moving on to the aesthetics, yeah, the 17 definitely looks so much better. The 16 I really didn't like. It's just it's just terrible. I don't like the shark fin, the tiny swoosh here on the lateral side and the heel. And the colorways that came out were okay. But yeah, I definitely feel like aesthetically, like for the whole silhouette of the shoe, the 17 definitely does look better. So tell us what you guys think looks better down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, we'll have to see, right? We'll have to see. The KD16 was a solid performer, but not my favorite of last year. But the 14 was my favorite shoe of that year when it came out. And same thing with the 15. The 16 was a little bit of a disappointment comparing to the 14 and 15, but still a solid shoe, right? But the 17 is definitely feeling a little bit better. The traction's feeling a little bit better. The cushion, even though the forefoot zoom unit is not as bouncy and you can't feel it as much, it still feels pretty dang nice for the cushion. And also I do like how it feels a little bit more minimal and also lighter in weight. But of course we'll have to see on how the support is in the KD17, right? Is it going to be terrible to the point where I don't like it, or is it going to be kind of like the PG6 where it's like adequate for support? So I didn't really mind it, but you know, for people that are a little bit heavier and need a little bit more support, it'll probably be a little bit of an issue for you, right? But for me, it was good. But anyways, as of right now, I do like the KD17 a little bit better, especially for the price as well. But of course, we'll have to see on the full performance review, like I said, for the support and stuff like that. But anyways, that about concludes this initial comparison. Again, if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I'll try to leave in the feeling in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.